Hey guys, in this episode of Plumbing Thought Zone, I'm gonna be sharing my thoughts on the 15th episode of the 7th season of one of my favorite shows ever, Fear the Walking Dead. And I want to say this before we get into the episode. I'm not intentionally being a contrarian. I really am not. For whatever reason, the universe makes it so every time I watch something, I have the opposite opinion of everybody. And I truly mean it. I do not intentionally try to be a contrarian. I don't pick the opposite opinion just because the majority or the mainstream people have a certain opinion. And the way I can prove that to you for this episode is that going into this episode, I was actually worried and expected that I was not gonna like it. I saw that everybody's reaction to this episode was one of disgust and hate, and I was already kind of spoiled on what was gonna be happening with that leak about Alicia leaving at the end of the episode and just walking away as everybody is floating away in boats. It turned out to be true, so I was spoiled about that already, but I honestly kind of enjoyed this episode. I don't mean that I think it's like a good episode or anything like that. I don't think so. But I would lie if I said that I didn't enjoy this episode in some ways more than I did for other episodes recently, you know? Because, like, sure, there were certain annoyances that I had with this episode, like the child version of Alicia, like the dialogue between the two. I just really didn't give a shit. And there's one opinion that I agree with the majority about, that being that the Walking Dead universe should stop with the stupid hallucination plot devices. I'm so tired of it. I think it's overplayed at this point, and it's such a lame excuse to just do unrealistic shit in a story. Like, I get it, you're trying to be very symbolic and stuff, but I don't give a shit, because if it's a hallucination, then the things that we're going through, the things we're talking about in the episode, are kind of pointless. So why should I give a shit about anything that is being said in this episode? That's kind of why I mostly zone out during most of the conversations that young Alicia and current Alicia were having, because I knew that whatever they were talking about wouldn't really even matter. Although I do want to commend the actress that they picked for child Alicia, because she really nailed Alicia Debnam Carey's quirks and facial expressions. Like, she genuinely behaved like how Alicia would have behaved as a kid. So I think that should be at the very least appreciated. And this episode, another thing that can be appreciated about this episode in my opinion, is the visuals. I feel like after a couple of episodes in the first half of the season, we kind of moved away from the really cool nuclear post-apocalyptic visuals with like the fogs and everything being super orange and burned to a crisp. And in this episode, we're actually a little bit back to that more. And I really enjoyed it. I love those visuals. I really enjoyed the visuals of the first episode of the season. And honestly, I would still argue that that episode of the season, the first episode, was probably the best episode of the season, because it was genuinely good, like just like how season 6 was, and it made sense and it was entertaining, and I loved the locations and the vibes and everything. It was great. But in this episode, we did have a lot of really cool visuals, especially the goddamn visuals in relation to Alicia's hand, because there's that one sequence which I actually picked a shot from that sequence to be the thumbnail for this video, so hope you liked it, because I really did like that visual. But I just really liked the visual of her walker fight arm, like her arm being like disintegrated and being very gory and then very skeleton-like, and then she looks at a reflection in a puddle of water on the ground and she sees a zombified version of herself. Like, that's so nasty and so cool. It's just, for whatever reason, it is really cool to see zombie-looking people still behave with consciousness. And I think it is because of the same reason why the Whisperers worked so well when they first appeared. in the main show, because we're so trained to expect the walkers to behave a certain way, so when they don't, it's so unsettling and so exciting and so interesting. And last season, this show actually kind of did a similar thing in a hallucination, or should I say the dream that Grace had, where we had the guy who was in the spin-off episode for Fear the Walking Dead, Dead in the Water. I forgot his name, the actor. The guy from Terminator. In that episode of Season 6, Episode 12, he was he looked like a walker. But he was still like smart, and he was able to talk and everything in that dream sequence. And it was really cool. That's why I actually picked those shots for the thumbnails, for that episode review, because it was so cool. And in this episode, we kind of have something similar to that with seeing Alicia like that. And talking about seeing a zombified version of Alicia in like a reflection or whatever, I would have really liked if the ending of the episode, which by the way I actually don't hate, but I feel like it would have been much cooler, and it would have still done what they were trying to do with that ending of the episode, if they made it kind of more ambiguous, with some of the shots having Alicia healed up, walking off, and then some of the other shots would have had Alicia looking like a zombie and walking away. I feel like that would have been much cooler, because right now I really have some frustrations about that ending of the episode, because all this season Alicia has been sick. And that has been annoying to deal with, because she has constantly been stumbling and being slow and hallucinating, and it's just been annoying to see her suffer like this. And it's just not been entertaining to watch her like that, even though Alicia Debnam Carey has killed her with her acting, especially in this goddamn episode, but we're gonna get to that. But it's just been frustrating to watch Alicia, the character, be sick all this time. So in the one episode where they boot her off the show, at the end of it she gets fine, like she gets healthy again and just walks off. Like, why? Seeing her healthy and walking off just makes me want to see more of her, because she's now back to normal and she can actually do cool stuff. But no, she's off the show for God knows what fucking reason. I guess it's because her contract for 7 years ran out and she was out of this show because of that. Although I feel like because of the way that they left it open-ended, it kind of implies that she's probably gonna be back at some point, or at least in some capacity, because I feel like her ending is much more open-ended than, say, Althea's. Because at least for Althea's ending, it sets up what is gonna be happening with her, where her story goes, you know? Her story after she leaves the show is that she's going off with this woman to live a happy life, essentially. But with Alicia, we're kind of left with nothing. She just kind of walks off with the vague idea that she's gonna be helping other people who she might have attracted to the tower with her message last episode. But yeah, I don't know. It is just a little frustrating, but I do love how kind of ambiguous they have left it, to the point where you can kind of assume that maybe she actually didn't survive there, and they probably, again, left it that way so they could do something like what they did with Madison, where her fate was kind of sealed in Season 4, where she was definitely gonna die, but she obviously now survived, and she's now back in the show. So I can't say that I wouldn't... I can say I can't imagine seeing Alicia back in some shape or form for Season 9 if this show doesn't get cancelled before that. But yeah, going back to Alicia Debnam Carey acting her ass off in this episode. This is the first episode since John Dory's death episode to make me cry. And I feel like this episode also made me cry even more than that one, because just in that one, yeah, it was sad that John Dory was dying and everything, because he was one of the most happiest and wholesome characters on this show. But with Alicia Debnam Carey, like, genuinely crying her eyes out and saying I'm sorry in such a crying voice just broke my heart. And even more so when both her and Coleman Domingo, who plays Victor Strand, both acted their ass off and cried for each other because they care for each other. Like, that really made me sad that Alicia was gonna be out, and I'm really curious to see where the story is gonna go from now, because next episode, episode 16, seems like a completely different everything, basically. Like, it genuinely feels like it's part of the next season, not even part of this season. Because next season they are gonna be moving to like Savannah, Georgia. That's where they're gonna start shooting the show. I don't know where it's gonna be set, but that's where they're gonna be shooting it. But like the visuals from the trailer for the next episode are so completely different, and refreshing, honestly, I gotta say. And I'm glad to see Madison back. But it is kind of annoying that in the episode that we lose Alicia, in the next one we're gonna be getting Madison back. And it's just kind of fucking annoying. But yeah, I almost forgot. We actually got Josiah back in this episode, and not even just him, but also the rabbi, Jacob, I think his name was. The first episode in a while where he has shown up, well, he showed up I think in last episode, but in this episode he actually got a bunch of lines. But I was much more glad to see Josiah back, because I really like his character. He's entertaining, his actor is entertaining, and his look in this episode, for whatever reason, together with his voice, really reminded me of Lee Everett from the Walking Dead game. Like, I've always wondered who I would love to play a live-action version of Lee Everett. And he's the closest I've seen somebody get to that, because his voice is, I feel like, close enough to where he could, I could, like, force my mind to accept that that is the guy from the game doing it. But his look is, with the beard, is also not that far off from the way Lee Everett looks. Like, I really liked seeing him in this episode, so I hope he actually is a regular next season, because it does seem like we're cutting the cast down, and depending on what happens in the next episode, we might cut it down even more. So I am curious who are going to be the characters who are going to be the focus for Season 8. It's obviously going to be Madison and Morgan, that's for sure, but I really hope characters like Josiah get more spotlight and become more of a part of the main group. And I hope we are, at this point, honestly, kind of done with the format that we've been going for with, like, the bottle episodes. Or, at the very least, if we're gonna still keep the bottle episodes, stop introducing new characters. As much as I enjoy the new characters you keep introducing, I think we should just use the cast that we already have, because it is kind of weird to have this random person who is not part of the cast come in for this episode and get more lines than an actor who's supposed to be part of the main cast. It's like, when you think about it, characters like Will did more in this season than characters like Grace. Not exactly, but you kind of get my point. You get a little bit of that impression. And again, I love the one-off characters like Will, was it Paul? I think the deaf guy's name was Paul. Like, I love those one-off characters. But at the same time, you should focus on the characters that you do have, and not on these new characters. The one thing that I am worried about, though, and this is a little bit of a sidetrack, but seeing how much I enjoy this anthology format for Fear, and see how much I enjoy these episodic characters that get introduced in the show, I feel like I'm gonna really hate Tales of the Walking Dead when it happens, because I feel like the characters of that show are gonna pale in comparison to the episodic characters of Fear. But the thing is, even the possibility of, like, having the showrunners of Fear move on to do Tales of the Walking Dead, it doesn't seem right in my mind, because they're not good showrunners. They have good ideas, assuming that they are the ones who came up with all these ideas and characters and everything, but they're terrible at executing them. But it's just that what Fear the Walking Dead was last season and this season, with all these episodic, all these characters that get introduced every episode that are great, like from straight up from the first episode of season 6 with, like, I think it was Isaac, like characters like that just made me realize how good Tales of the Walking Dead will be. But seeing the trailer for Tales of the Walking Dead and seeing that, I feel like the vibe that they're going for that show is completely different from what I want it to be, which is basically like what Fear the Walking Dead has been for the last 2 seasons, but actually good. Just makes me worried about whether I'm actually gonna like Tales of the Walking Dead, and it makes me feel like genuinely I might not like it because the vibe is gonna be so different, and the characters are not gonna be as entertaining as those characters. But obviously, I'm gonna wait and see. I just still have some opinions before we get to that. And hopefully, whenever we do get a trailer for Tales of the Walking Dead, which I assume it's not gonna be far off from now because it is supposed to air at some point during the summer, if I remember correctly. So it shouldn't be that far off when we get a trailer for Tales. Hopefully that trailer is going to give me more of an idea what the show is going to be like tone-wise. And also there's this weird thing about it where in IMDb it says that certain characters are going to be featured in more than one episode, which kind of makes it come off weird because it's supposed to be it's supposed to be like Tales of the Walking Dead with like every episode being only a bunch of characters, but with them saying that with IMDb saying that certain characters might appear in more than one episode, I wonder if they're gonna do something akin to, I think it was Black Summer that did it. I think Black Summer did something which showed a bunch of different timelines with a bunch of different characters and showed the beginning of a zombie outbreak from different perspectives, which is a cool idea. But I really hope that Tales of the Walking Dead doesn't copy that because I want it to be its own thing. And I just like I said, I like the concept of an anthology series in the zombie apocalypse, like what Fear has been doing. But do it like an actual anthology with completely different, disconnected stories for each episode. Basically do a bunch of mini zombie movies. That's what I want to see, so hopefully we are gonna get that. But yeah, I don't know. This was honestly a surprisingly fun episode. Sure, it had some silly stuff and some frustrations, and you can even see how I'm not really talking too much about the plot of this episode and some of the decisions that the characters make, like constantly letting Alicia go on her own and then go and save her ass. But to be honest, I didn't really even care about that much. Like, it bothered me, but at this point I've accepted it, and I'm trying to look for the things to enjoy about the show, not for the things to hate, you know? It's like, I've accepted that this show is gonna be below the standards that I want it to have, so I'm gonna try to like it for what it is, not for what I want it to be. And hopefully season 8 is going to be better. I'm hoping that's going to be the case. And talking about season 8 and the trailer for the 16th episode, I really like Madison's new weapon, her hammer, her huge-ass hammer, which is kind of like, I guess, of like an evolved version of her weapon in early seasons, which was a hammer, but obviously a smaller one. She used to use a hammer quite a lot. And it is really cool, and there's this one sequence in next episode trailer where she kills like 4 walkers in a circle. That looks really cool. I honestly kind of can't wait to watch next week's episode. And also, wasn't this supposed to be like the 100th episode of this show? It didn't really feel like it. I guess it was, in a way, because we did get some flashback shots of Nick and Madison and everything. I wish we got more of the OG characters like Travis and Chris and Ophelia. But to be honest, I don't really care too much. Because I feel like if you wanted to do a 100th episode actually properly, you would go for a completely different thing and not do it like an Alicia's last episode kind of thing. And also, I mean, I guess I'm gonna mention it now once we get through my notes, so let's just go through it. I was gonna say something, but I'm gonna say it once we get to it in my notes. So, the first thing I've written about this episode is, hey, that's from the trailer, which is in relation to that shot in the beginning of the episode where it's kind of like Alicia going in and out of consciousness and she sees people running away from the tower. That is everybody running away from the tower and going to the beach where they can sail away from the radiation. Now, hopefully people will stop asking why don't they just leave the nuclear radiation zone. Because I've honestly been fucking tired of people asking that, because it was literally fucking explained in episode 2 that the way the bombs fell have basically made it impossible to get out of Texas without sailing. You can question why they have not sailed until this point, but you cannot question why they haven't left, because they explained in episode 2 that the way the bombs fell basically has surrounded Texas, or the middle of Texas has been surrounded by nuclear fallout. So it's like 6 hours of nuclear fallout in each direction or some shit. And again, you can question whether it was executed properly, but you cannot say that the show did not explain it to you. Next thing I've written is, the directing is really cool, and like I said, the cinematography in this episode is really, really good. I really enjoyed that aspect of this episode. The next thing I've written is, hey, the rabbi finally has a line, which I already talked about, so we're just gonna go for the next thing I've written, which is, can Alicia just stay in one place? Also, really cool title card. I actually completely forgot about how cool the title card looked. I really, really liked it. It was kind of reminiscent a little bit of the title card for, I think it was episode 16 of last season when Teddy dropped the bombs, with the title card not really having any sound to it, but it wasn't as scary. Like, that title card for Teddy in episode 16 is probably the best one out of these. If there's one thing I want them to keep for season 8, is definitely these title cards. I really, really like them. Yeah, let's continue. Next thing I've written is, we're back to the great visuals of early season 7, which I already went through when I said that after the first couple of episodes of season 7, we kind of stopped having really cool visuals, or at least having an emphasis on them. Next thing I've written is, that arm is so nasty. And yeah, that is in relation to what I talked about with like the disintegrated arm, which Alicia was hallucinating about. That was really fucking nasty. And again, the next thing I've written is, that visual of her as a zombie is so cool and also creepy. And indeed, it is. The next thing I've written is, honestly, this episode is not that bad outside of the fact that it is a hallucination, which I already kind of talked about, where I don't like hallucination episodes, not because they're bad per se, but because what the person is hallucinating about is not real. It's not actually happening. So it basically bears no consequences to the plot. It's like, I talked about this in, I think it was, I don't know if I actually talked about it in that episode because I didn't review that episode, but in episode 10 or episode 14 of season 10 of the main show, Carol hallucinates Alpha for the whole episode pretty much, and they have interactions in that hallucination state. But the thing is, wouldn't it have been cooler to have actual interactions between Carol and Alpha throughout the season instead of this stupid hallucination, which is obviously not the two characters they're interacting? It's like, you're just using cheap shit to make it seem cool. Like, you're using things that are not real just as an excuse to do some cool shit. Like, that could also be made an argument about why episode 12 of last season was bad, because again, it was a hallucination, and what was happening in that hallucination was not real. But at least it was actually genuinely really, really cool what happened in that, and it was something completely different with fucking zombies, people looking like genuinely dead zombies attacking Grace and her possible future daughter. And it still had kind of consequences for the episode in that case, because it made you excited or interested at least about the possibility of this future child that Grace will be having, and seeing her grow up and do the things that she does in that dream state. Thus making it sadder when the baby dies. Like, it still has a purpose there. But in this episode, it's just overtly fake deep symbolic bullshit, and it was kind of annoying, but eh. And also, I don't know if I mentioned this, but I've written quite a lot of notes for this episode. I think that just signifies how entertaining it was, I guess. Because, yeah, it's like this page, and then even a little bit of a third one, so yeah. I had a lot to say about this episode. I feel like you can even see it in the amount of things that I've said without having to read my notes. Because for the previous couple of episodes, I feel like I didn't have much to talk about. The next thing I've written is, man, those glimpses of walkers remind me of when Shane turned. And this is in relation to the fact that throughout this whole episode, Alicia dreams about walkers and becoming a walker, which is kind of reminiscent of something that The Walking Dead did when, back in Season 2, Shane was killed and was turning. Like, we were seeing kind of visual glimpses of zombies as the camera was focusing on Shane's eye, kind of making it seem like maybe the zombie virus kind of floods your brain with zombie imagery or something. It's just like kind of like a really cool concept, and this feels kind of reminiscent of that. It feels like an idea that they took from that and applied it here, and I like that. The next thing I've written is, again, in relation to the cinematography, being that the cinematography is fucking amazing this episode, and it definitely was. A lot of really colorful and vibrant colors. Like, you definitely cannot say that the Fear the Walking Dead has been failing in that regard, because I feel like the visuals of Season 6 and 7 of Fear the Walking Dead have been fucking miles ahead, both The Walking Dead and World Beyond. Next thing I've written is, hey, Josiah is back. He looks like Lee from the Telltale games, which is something I already went through that. The next thing I've written is, I hate that kid. And that is in relation to the fact that I hated the kid version of Alicia, because the whole episode she was just kind of playing the pronoun game, and not really talking straight to Alicia and everything, and just it felt like it was kind of interrupting the plot constantly and forcing, making Alicia do dumb decisions and act stupidly. Next thing I've written is, man, this is actually breaking my heart. And this is in relation to the moment where Alicia went back to the tower to talk to Strand and to save his ass. And they were, like, both of them crying and being emotional, and with, like, Alicia, the actress, like, bawling her eyes out during that whole scene was, like, really broke my heart. Next thing I've written is, man, that kid looks a lot like Alicia. Her facial expressions are really accurate. And I already went through that, but that's also what I wrote down. Next thing I've written is, Strand is literally me right now. And I think that's in relation to the scene when Strand is sitting in the boat, and I think he was talking about something that he will not leave Alicia, and he was just screaming like, no, I'm not gonna leave you, no. You know what, give me a second to check the scene to be sure exactly what he says. Like, his reaction in that whole scene really felt like how I was feeling in that situation, with him feeling very angry and sad about Alicia staying behind and essentially dying. Like, it really hit me. That whole scene was really fucking hurtful. The next thing I've written is she fine? That is such bullshit. And I already kind of went through that and how I feel about it. I feel like it's kind of such a fucking bullshit thing to do as a writer, where you have your viewers annoyed for a season by your character behaving like a moron, or just behaving in a frustrating manner where she just constantly goes off and comes back and goes off and comes back and stuff, and it's sick and she's constantly fainting and stuff, and then at the end of the season, when she's supposed to be leaving the show, you have her get fixed. That's when you have her get fixed. when she leaves the fucking show. And seeing her be healthy and be back to being a badass, it just makes me angry that we're not gonna see any more of her, you know? And I feel like it's such a bullshit thing to do. And the final thing that I wrote about this is, so she's fine after all, and now she's off the show. But it doesn't seem to be exactly the case. It's not clear what the writers even intended at this point, because based on what we are given in the episode itself, to me it comes off as like a parallel to Madison's story where she sacrificed herself so everybody else could leave. In this case, Alicia is not sacrificing herself as much really, but she still helped everybody survive and everything. And so essentially it's a parallel to Madison helping everybody, supposedly dying, then leaving and coming back. Which is why it leads me to believe that Alicia is going to be back at some point. But then the writers, the showrunners, have said that this was the last episode of Alicia and that they do not have plans to get her back. And they've said that it was ambiguous, they've left it intentionally ambiguous whether she actually survived what happened in the episode or whether she died. And the thing is, I don't necessarily hate the idea that she could possibly have died, and her final moments there where we see her be fine is her fucking dreaming her last moments or whatever. Because the way they portray it is kind of reminiscent to the way Nick died, with him getting shot and dying. And then in the next shot, it's like a flashback to the past when he's lying in a field. And they kind of do something similar here with the whole sequence. But I feel like they still could have done more to make it even more ambiguous, or at least leave more clues towards one or the other. Because like I said, I think it would have been really cool if we see her, the shots in which she's like, looks healthy and she's just walking off with shooting the gun at the walker and everything. But then in another shot, you actually see her as a walker. I think that honestly probably would have pissed people off more, because right now at least there's a possibility that they could bring her back sooner rather than later. But I don't know, I just like that idea. Maybe just because I came up with it, but I think it would have been a really cool thing that they could have done, because they clearly kind of intended to, I don't know, they kind of had some ideas about making her seem like very kind of zombie-like. Because the way she has been suffering from the zombie bite isn't like anybody we've seen before. Because usually when you get bitten, you die in maybe a day or two at most. Not fucking months with constantly going and coming and going kind of fever. That is unheard of. So she's clearly not sick from the bite. But again, if at least it kind of led to an ambiguous ending where she could have turned into a walker or whatever, I feel like it could have been cooler, you know? I feel like thematically it would have made sense for them to do that, but what do I know? So yeah, overall, honestly, not bad of an episode. Still dumb, but to be honest, this show is dumb at this point. So I've kind of decided to kind of turn off my brain and just watch it for what it is, not for what I want it to be. And when it's like this, when it's clearly an effort and emotion and a lot of work put into it, it is enjoyable enough for me. And I'm sad if it is not for you guys, but it is for me, so what can you do? So yeah, in terms of a rating for this episode, I'm actually going to give it a 9.1 out of 10. I think in a way it is one of the best episodes of the season, for sure. It's still frustrating, it's still dumb, but it is actually really well made. The visuals are great. Some ideas in this episode are really good. Really cool. The emotion in this episode is off the charts. I really enjoyed it. But yeah, definitely can see ways that it could have been better. It's just that the context surrounding it kind of makes it go down. Because if you take it on its own, it's actually a good episode for this show, in my opinion, at least. And for this show in terms of what it has become after season 4, you know. But yeah, what did you guys think about this episode? Comment your thoughts down below and let's have a discussion about it. And also, before we end this video, I just want to give a huge shout out to my currently 1 patron on Patreon. Deadpool. Thank you for your support, I really appreciate it. It really means a lot to me that you have decided to support me, have continued to support me for such a long time. Hope you continue to enjoy my content and continue to support me going forward. Thank you very much. Another thing that I also want to tell you guys before we end this video is something about me that some of you may or may not know, that will also explain why do I look and dress the way that I do. That being the fact that I am trans. In particular, I am somewhere between a non-binary person and a trans woman. I'm not quite sure at the moment and probably won't be sure until I talk to a professional who deals with trans people, but that is where the reason why I'm telling you all this comes. I need your help. Due to the fact that I live in a homophobic and transphobic Eastern European country with a family that won't really accept the fact that I'm trans if they found out, there is not really a feasible or easy way for me to transition here with minimal repercussions. So that's why I would really appreciate any kind or any amount of support that you guys can give me with this. That said, I don't want to guilt trip you or anything, so if you don't want to or you don't have the means to help out, that's fine, don't feel bad. I just want you to know that it would be greatly appreciated if you did help me out get out of this situation. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, and thank you for hearing me out. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please leave a like and subscribe. Also, check out the description to my Twitter if you want to follow me over there, and to my Wattpad where I post my stories, because in addition to doing all these videos on my channel, I'm also a writer. And if you enjoy my stories or simply enjoy my videos, you can head over to my Patreon or to my Ko-fi account where you can pledge support and help get the channel going, help support me so I can keep writing the stories you enjoy. But if you don't want to do it, that's completely fine. You can still help me out in other ways, like liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and especially sharing this video with somebody who you think might enjoy it. And I think this is pretty much it for this video, so hopefully I'm gonna see you in the next one. Bye!